My name is Jessica Martinez, and I was 31 years old when my doorbell camera showed me exactly who my husband really was. We'd been married for 7 years, and for the last 2, Nathan had been complaining that our life together was boring. He wanted spontaneity, adventure, excitement, things he claimed I couldn't provide because I was too practical, too routine-oriented, too predictable. I worked as a pharmacy technician at a hospital, maintaining steady hours and coming home exhausted from 12-hour shifts. Nathan was a sales manager for a tech company, traveling frequently and constantly surrounded by younger, more dynamic coworkers. He'd started comparing me unfavorably to these colleagues, pointing out how they went rock climbing on weekends or took impromptu trips to Vegas. I'd tried suggesting activities we could do together, but he always had excuses. Eventually, I stopped trying, accepting that maybe I really was too boring for the life he wanted. I had no idea he'd already found someone who wasn't. The problems in our marriage had escalated slowly over 2 years. Nathan started staying out later after work, claiming team dinners or client entertainment. He'd come home smelling like perfume and alcohol, dismissing my concerns by saying I was being paranoid and controlling. He stopped initiating physical intimacy, and when I tried, he'd claim exhaustion or stress. Our conversations became minimal, just logistics about bills, schedules, and household maintenance. Nothing personal, nothing deep, nothing that resembled the connection we'd once shared. My younger sister, Christina, noticed during a visit last Christmas. She pulled me aside while Nathan was outside taking a work call and asked if everything was okay between us. I insisted it was just a rough patch, that all marriages went through difficult periods. But her concerned expression stayed with me for weeks afterward. She'd always been more intuitive than me, better at reading people's true intentions. I should have trusted her instincts instead of dismissing them. In early March, Nathan announced he was going on a week-long business trip to Seattle for a regional sales conference. This wasn't unusual, he traveled twice a month for work. But something about this trip felt different. He was excited in a way I hadn't seen in years, practically bouncing around the house while packing. He bought new clothes specifically for the trip, expensive button-down shirts and designer jeans he'd never worn for me. When I commented on his enthusiasm, he said he was just looking forward to networking opportunities and potential promotions. The morning he left, he kissed my cheek distractedly and reminded me to water his office plants. I watched him drive away feeling an emptiness that had become familiar. That same morning, I received a notification on my phone from our doorbell camera system. We'd installed the Ring doorbell 6 months earlier after a neighborhood burglary, and I'd forgotten I'd set it to send alerts for all motion detection. The notification showed Nathan loading luggage into his car at 6 in the morning. I almost deleted it, then paused. Something made me save the video instead. Nathan's trip was supposed to last from Monday through Friday. He called me Monday evening to say he'd arrived safely and the hotel was nice. Tuesday, he texted briefly about boring conference sessions. Wednesday, he sent a photo of the Seattle skyline with a caption about missing home. Everything seemed normal, exactly what I'd expect from a business trip. Then Thursday afternoon, while I was on my lunch break at the hospital, my phone buzzed with another doorbell camera notification. I glanced at it absently, expecting to see a delivery driver or maybe a neighbor's cat. Instead, I saw Nathan's car pulling into our driveway. My heart stopped. He was supposed to be in Seattle. The timestamp showed 2:14 in the afternoon. I watched, confused and increasingly alarmed, as Nathan got out of his car and walked to our front door. But he didn't use his key. Instead, he knocked, then stepped back, smiling at something or someone inside. The door opened, and a woman I'd never seen before appeared. She was younger than me, probably mid-20s, with long blonde hair and a bright smile. She wore yoga pants and a fitted tank top, my tank top, I realized with shock. They embraced immediately, kissing in our doorway before disappearing inside our house together. I sat frozen in the hospital break room, staring at my phone screen, unable to process what I'd just witnessed. Nathan wasn't in Seattle. He was at our house with another woman, wearing my clothes, kissing him in our doorway. My hand started shaking so badly I nearly dropped my phone. My coworker, Priya, noticed and asked if I was okay. I couldn't answer, couldn't form words, couldn't do anything except replay that video over and over. Nathan's smile, so genuine and warm, a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in over a year. The ease with which they touched each other, comfortable and familiar. The fact that she was wearing my clothing, as if she belonged in my life, my home, my marriage. Priya took my phone gently and watched the video, her expression shifting from concern to anger. "Jessica, you need to go home right now," she said firmly. "I'll cover your shift. Go." I wanted to argue, to insist I could finish my work day, but my supervisor had already appeared. Priya must have signaled her. Within 10 minutes, I was in my car, driving home on autopilot, my mind blank with shock. I parked down the street from our house, not wanting Nathan to hear my car and have time to hide evidence or fabricate explanations. From my position, I could see his car still in the driveway, exactly where the doorbell camera had shown it hours earlier. I checked my phone, it was now 4:30. I'd left work early but not immediately, having sat in the parking lot for over an hour trying to decide how to handle this. Should I burst in and confront them? Call the police? Take more time to gather evidence? I chose the latter option, my pharmacy training kicking in with methodical logic. I opened the doorbell camera app and scrolled through the motion-triggered recordings from the past week. What I found made my stomach turn. Monday morning, after Nathan had supposedly left for Seattle, he'd returned to our house 90 minutes later with the same blonde woman. They'd spent several hours inside before both leaving together in her car. Tuesday afternoon, same pattern, Nathan's car in the driveway, the woman arriving shortly after, both entering our house. Wednesday, Thursday morning before I'd caught them. They'd been using our house while I was at work, conducting their affair in my home, in my bed, surrounded by my belongings. I documented everything methodically. I downloaded each video file, saved them to cloud storage, and emailed copies to myself. I took screenshots with timestamps showing dates and times. I even recorded my phone screen playing the videos, creating multiple backups. Only after securing all evidence did I drive around the block and park normally in our driveway behind Nathan's car, blocking his exit. My hands had stopped shaking, replaced by cold fury and calculated determination. I walked to our front door and used my key, entering my own house quietly. I could hear voices upstairs, laughing and talking in our bedroom. Music played softly, romantic jazz that Nathan had never played for me. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step feeling surreal, as if I was watching myself from outside my body. Our bedroom door was partially open. Through the gap, I could see them on our bed, tangled in sheets I'd washed just last weekend. They were clothed, thankfully, but clearly intimate, his arm around her shoulders while they looked at something on her phone. I pushed the door open fully, and they both jumped like teenagers caught by parents. Nathan's face went through a remarkable transformation, shock, fear, guilt, then strangely, anger. He scrambled to his feet, positioning himself between me and the woman as if protecting her from me. "Jessica. What are you doing home?" he demanded, his voice accusatory rather than apologetic. I almost laughed at the absurdity. What am I doing home? I live here, Nathan. The better question is, what are you doing here when you're supposed to be in Seattle? The woman had pulled the sheets up to her chin, her earlier confidence evaporating. She looked young and scared, her eyes darting between Nathan and me. "Who is she?" I asked, my voice surprisingly steady. Nathan's jaw clenched. "This is And you brought your sales associate to our home while pretending to be on a business trip? I continued, each word measured and calm. The calmness seemed to unnerve him more than if I'd been screaming. He started to respond, then stopped, seeming to realize there was no explanation that could justify this situation. Madison gathered courage and spoke directly to me, her voice small and trembling. I'm so sorry, Mrs. Martinez. I didn't know. Nathan told me you were separated. He said you'd filed for divorce months ago and were just waiting for it to finalize. He said you were living with your sister. I turned to Nathan, who'd gone pale. Is that what you told her? That we're separated? He opened his mouth, closed it, then tried a different approach. Jessica, let me explain. This isn't what it looks like. It looks like you're having an affair with a coworker in our marital bed while lying to both of us, I interrupted. What part am I misunderstanding? Madison was now crying, pulling on her clothes hastily. I'm so sorry, she kept repeating. I thought, he showed me apartment listings and talked about his divorce constantly. I never would have, if I'd known he was lying. She grabbed her purse and pushed past both of us, running down the stairs. We heard the front door slam moments later. Nathan and I stood in our bedroom, years of marriage hanging between us like a toxic cloud. Nathan tried to salvage the situation with explanations that insulted my intelligence. He claimed Madison had pursued him aggressively at work, that he tried to resist but she'd been persistent, that this was the first time anything physical had happened. Each lie was more transparent than the last. I pulled out my phone and opened the doorbell camera app, showing him the recordings from the past week. You've been bringing her here every day while I was at work. You faked an entire business trip so you could spend a week with her without interruption. This isn't a one-time mistake, Nathan. This is a calculated, ongoing affair. He watched the videos, his face crumbling as he realized how thoroughly I'd caught him. How long have you been recording? He asked weakly. 6 months. Since we installed the doorbell camera. I showed him more footage I'd discovered while sitting in my car, recordings from 2 months ago showing Madison arriving and leaving, from 3 weeks ago, from last month. A pattern of regular visits, always while I was at work, always hidden and secret. Nathan's strategy shifted from denial to self-pity. He sat on our bed, head in his hands, and started talking about how lonely he'd been, how our marriage had become stale, how I never wanted to do anything exciting. You're always working or tired, he said, as if this justified betraying me. We never go anywhere or do anything fun. I felt like I was dying of boredom, Jessica. Madison made me feel alive again. His words were meant to make me feel guilty, to share blame for his choices. Instead, they crystallized my resolve. So because I work 12-hour shifts at a hospital helping sick people, because I come home tired and want quiet evenings instead of constant adventure, you decided infidelity was the appropriate response? I asked. You could have suggested marriage counseling. You could have communicated your needs. You could have asked for a divorce if you were that unhappy. Instead, you lied, cheated, and blamed me for your choices. He looked up, tears in his eyes. I love you, Jessica. I made a terrible mistake, but I love you. We can fix this. Please don't throw away 7 years of marriage. I told Nathan to leave the house immediately. He protested, saying it was his home too, that I couldn't just kick him out. I calmly explained that he could leave voluntarily now or I'd call the police and show them videos of him bringing another woman into our home without my knowledge or consent. His legal standing was questionable at best. He packed a bag hastily, throwing clothes and toiletries into a duffel while making promises about counseling and changing and proving himself. I didn't respond to any of it, just waited silently for him to finish and get out. After he left, I changed all the locks on our doors. Then I called a locksmith to come immediately and install new deadbolts. I wasn't taking chances that Nathan had made copies of keys or would try to enter when I wasn't home. While waiting for the locksmith, I stripped our bed completely, throwing sheets and pillowcases directly into the garbage. Some things couldn't be washed clean. I remade the bed with fresh linens from the closet, trying to reclaim my space from the violation of Madison's presence. That evening, I called my sister Christina and told her everything. She was furious on my behalf, offering to drive over immediately and stay with me. I declined, needing space to process privately, but I appreciated her support. I knew something was wrong at Christmas, she said. The way he looked at you, or didn't look at you, it was like you were roommates, not spouses. I should have said something stronger. I assured her this wasn't her fault, that Nathan's choices were entirely his own. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and began researching divorce attorneys. Unlike the protagonists in those other stories, I didn't have secret inheritance money or substantial savings. My hospital's salary was decent but not extravagant, and most of our money was joint. However, Nathan's affair and use of marital property to conduct it might give me leverage. I scheduled consultations with 2 attorneys for the following week, determined to understand my options before making any decisions. I also called my supervisor and requested a few days off to handle a personal emergency. She agreed immediately, concerned by my earlier abrupt departure. Nathan called and texted constantly over the next 2 days. His messages cycled through anger, bargaining, and desperation. He demanded I answer his calls, accused me of overreacting, promised he'd ended things with Madison permanently, begged for another chance. I didn't respond to any of it, following advice I'd read online about not communicating during the initial crisis period. Saturday morning, Nathan showed up at our house, pounding on the door and shouting through it that we needed to talk. I didn't answer, just called the police and reported someone trespassing and harassing me. When officers arrived, Nathan tried to explain he lived there and had a right to access his home. I showed them my marriage certificate and explained I'd asked him to leave after discovering his infidelity. I showed them the doorbell videos of him bringing another woman to our home without my knowledge. The officers suggested he find somewhere else to stay until our domestic situation was resolved legally. He left, humiliated and furious, shooting me venomous looks through the window. My first attorney consultation was Monday morning with Andrew Chen. No, I need a different name. My first attorney consultation was Monday morning with Richard Wallace, a divorce attorney recommended by a coworker. He reviewed the doorbell videos with professional interest, occasionally making notes. This is excellent evidence of adultery and misuse of marital property, he said. In this state, fault-based divorce can impact property division and alimony. Your husband's affair, combined with his use of your shared home to conduct it, strengthens your position considerably. He outlined potential outcomes. I could likely keep the house if I could afford the mortgage independently or through spousal support. Nathan's income was significantly higher than mine, making spousal support probable. We'd split retirement accounts and other assets accumulated during the marriage. What about his relationship with Madison? I asked. Does it matter that he lied to her about being separated? Richard shook his head. That's between them. Our focus is protecting your interests in the divorce. His retainer was $5,000, more than I had readily available. I thanked him and moved to my second consultation. The second attorney, Patricia Vaughn, was younger and more aggressive. She looked at the doorbell videos and immediately suggested we use them strategically. Don't just file for divorce quietly, she advised. Your husband works in sales, which depends on reputation and client relationships. He's been conducting an affair with a subordinate colleague, which likely violates his company's ethics policies. You have leverage beyond just the divorce. She suggested I could threaten to report the affair to Nathan's employer unless he agreed to favorable settlement terms. I felt uncomfortable with that approach. It seemed manipulative and vindictive. Patricia shrugged. I'm showing you all available options. You don't have to use nuclear weapons, but knowing you have them changes negotiations. Her retainer was also $5,000. I left both consultations feeling overwhelmed. I didn't have $5,000 immediately accessible without dipping into joint accounts, which could create legal complications. I needed a different strategy or different funding. That evening, I called my parents and explained the situation. They were shocked and supportive, offering to loan me money for attorney fees. I accepted gratefully, relieved to have their backing. While waiting for my parents to transfer funds, I did something probably inadvisable. I scrolled through Nathan's social media accounts. His Facebook was mostly work-related posts and sports commentary, nothing revealing. But his Instagram, which he didn't know I'd discovered the password to months ago, told a different story. There were no photos of Madison, but there were numerous check-ins at restaurants and bars around the city over the past 3 months, always when he told me he was working late or traveling. I cross-referenced these locations with our credit card statements and found he'd been using our joint card to pay for these dates. Expensive dinners, cocktails, even a weekend at a bed and breakfast an hour away, all charged to our shared account. I documented everything, taking screenshots and matching them with credit card transactions. This wasn't just an affair conducted in our home, it was an affair funded by our joint finances. He'd been spending our money to wine and dine Madison while telling me we needed to budget more carefully. The hypocrisy was staggering. I retained Patricia Vaughn, deciding her aggressive approach matched my growing anger about Nathan's financial deception. With my parents' loan, I paid her retainer and authorized her to file divorce papers immediately. She drafted a petition citing adultery and seeking primary possession of the house, 60% of marital assets due to his misconduct, and 3 years of spousal support. This is ambitious, she admitted, but your evidence justifies aggressive positioning. We can always negotiate down, but we're starting from strength. Nathan was served at his office on Wednesday afternoon, exactly 2 weeks after I'd caught him with Madison. Patricia had arranged for the process server to deliver papers during his department meeting, ensuring maximum professional embarrassment. It was petty, but Nathan had humiliated me in our home, turnabout felt appropriate. He called me immediately, screaming about humiliation and revenge. I hung up without responding. Patricia had instructed me to communicate only through her, and I followed that direction religiously. Every call, every text from Nathan went unanswered. His frustration grew daily, evident in increasingly unhinged messages threatening legal action, public exposure, and financial ruin. 2 days after being served, Nathan's attorney contacted Patricia requesting a settlement conference. Apparently, Nathan wanted to avoid court proceedings and public disclosure of his affair. His attorney, Kyle Thornton, suggested we mediate privately to reach reasonable terms. Patricia agreed but maintained our aggressive initial position. The conference was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened. Madison contacted me. She sent a Facebook message apologizing profusely and asking if we could talk. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a neutral coffee shop. She arrived looking miserable, her eyes red from crying. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Martinez," she began immediately. "Nathan lied to me about everything. When I found out the truth, that you weren't separated, that he'd made up the whole story, I felt sick. I ended things immediately and reported the affair to our HR department. This surprised me." "You reported it?" She nodded. "Our company has strict policies about supervisors having relationships with subordinates. Nathan was my manager, which made the relationship inappropriate regardless of his marital status. HR is investigating now, and he's been temporarily reassigned while they determine if he violated policies." Madison explained she'd been working at Nathan's company for 6 months when he'd started paying special attention to her. He'd mentored her on sales techniques, invited her to client dinners, and gradually shared personal information about his supposedly failing marriage. "He said you'd grown apart years ago, that you wanted different things, that divorce was imminent," Madison said tearfully. He showed me apartment listings and talked about where he'd live after the split. I thought I was dating a soon-to-be divorced man, not helping someone cheat on his wife. I felt an unexpected sympathy for her. She was young, probably naive, and had been manipulated by someone she'd trusted professionally. Did he spend company money on your relationship? I asked. She hesitated, then nodded. Sometimes he'd say dinners or trips were client entertainment and expense them. I didn't realize until recently that was fraud. That's part of what I reported to HR. This information was valuable. If Nathan had been misusing company funds to support his affair, his employment could be terminated, which would dramatically impact his ability to pay spousal support. The settlement conference on Tuesday was tense and unproductive. Nathan arrived with Kyle Thornton, looking haggard and defeated. His company investigation had apparently expanded beyond the affair to examine his expense reports, and he was facing potential termination. Kyle opened by suggesting we were being unreasonable, that 60% of assets was excessive for a 7-year marriage. Patricia countered by presenting the credit card statements showing Nathan had spent over $12,000 of marital funds on his affair, dinners, trips, gifts for Madison. Your client used joint marital assets to conduct an extramarital relationship, Patricia stated. We're seeking compensation for those misappropriated funds plus punitive division based on his fault. Nathan exploded. Punitive? You're trying to punish me. This is vindictive. Patricia remained calm. Your actions have consequences, Mr. Martinez. You betrayed your wife, violated her trust, misused marital property and finances, and lied extensively. The law allows for fault-based considerations in asset division. Kyle called for a recess, pulling Nathan into the hallway. When they returned, Kyle presented a revised offer, 50-50 asset split, reimbursement of the $12,000 Nathan had spent on Madison, and 2 years of spousal support at $1,500 monthly. Patricia rejected it immediately. 3 years at $2,000 monthly, and your client pays my client's legal fees. Non-negotiable. Negotiations continued for 3 hours, both sides making incremental movements. Finally, we reached agreement. I'd keep the house, Nathan would keep his car and certain personal assets, we'd split retirement accounts equally, Nathan would reimburse me $10,000 for affair-related expenses, and he'd pay 2.5 years of spousal support at $1,800 monthly. He'd also pay half my legal fees. It wasn't everything we'd initially demanded, but it was fair and gave me financial stability. Nathan signed the agreement with visible resentment, his signature angry slashes across the page. As we left the conference room, he tried one last time to speak to me directly. Jessica, I really am sorry. I know I destroyed everything, but I want you to know I did love you. I just got lost somewhere. I looked at him, this man I'd spent 7 years with, and felt nothing but exhausted relief that it was ending. You weren't lost, Nathan. You knew exactly what you were doing. You just didn't care about the consequences until they affected you. That was the last private conversation we ever had. The divorce was finalized in August, 5 months after I'd caught Nathan and Madison on my doorbell camera. The hearing was brief and procedural, Judge Harold Brennan reviewing our settlement agreement and confirming we both accepted its terms. When he declared our marriage officially dissolved, I felt a weight lift that I hadn't fully recognized I'd been carrying. Nathan left the courthouse quickly, avoiding eye contact. I stood on the steps for a moment, breathing deeply and processing my new status, single, independent, and free from a marriage that had been slowly suffocating me. I later learned through mutual acquaintances that Nathan had indeed been fired from his company. The investigation revealed he'd fraudulently expensed over $20,000 of personal spending as business costs over 18 months. Madison had been fired as well, though she found another job relatively quickly. Nathan, however, struggled professionally, his reputation damaged by the scandal. His spousal support payments came irregularly, and I had to enforce them through court orders twice. Eventually, he found a lower-paying position at a smaller company and seemed to stabilize financially, though never at his previous level. Rebuilding my life took time and intention. I threw myself into work, picking up extra shifts at the hospital and saving aggressively. The house became my sanctuary. I redecorated completely, erasing any trace of Nathan and our failed marriage. I painted walls, bought new furniture, and turned his former office into a reading room filled with books and comfortable seating. I also started therapy to process the betrayal and understand patterns that had made me vulnerable to Nathan's manipulation. My therapist helped me recognize I'd been slowly erasing myself to accommodate his criticisms, becoming smaller and quieter to avoid conflict. You weren't too boring, she told me repeatedly. You were with someone who needed you to believe you were inadequate so he could justify his behavior. That realization was liberating. I wasn't deficient, I'd just been with someone who needed to diminish me to feel better about himself. I reconnected with friends I'd drifted from during my marriage, joined a book club, and started hiking on weekends, activities Nathan had claimed were too boring for him. Ironically, without him, my life became fuller and more satisfying than it had been in years. Now, 2 years after that Thursday afternoon when my doorbell camera revealed my husband's betrayal, I'm living a life I genuinely love. I was promoted to lead pharmacy technician at the hospital, with a substantial raise and better schedule flexibility. I'm dating someone new, carefully and with clear boundaries, having learned important lessons about recognizing red flags and maintaining my identity within relationships. My house is paid down significantly thanks to careful budgeting and Nathan's support payments, which finally ended last month. I kept the doorbell camera, though I sometimes think about that notification that changed everything. If I hadn't checked my phone that Thursday, if I hadn't seen Nathan's car in our driveway when he was supposed to be in Seattle, how much longer would his affair have continued? Months? Years? Would I still be married to him, oblivious and diminished, believing his lies about my inadequacy? The doorbell camera didn't just expose Nathan's betrayal, it freed me from a marriage where I was constantly told I wasn't enough. And the truth was, I'd always been enough. More than enough. I just needed to see clearly who Nathan really was to recognize my own worth. Technology had accidentally given me that gift, and I'd had the courage to act on what it revealed. Sometimes the most boring, routine technology, a simple doorbell camera recording ordinary comings and goings, can show you the most important truths about your life. And sometimes, being called boring by the wrong person is actually the highest compliment.